Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison stood at the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the massive Zephyrian warship approach through the viewport. The alien vessel looked like a giant metal shark, all sharp edges and dark armor plating. Its weapons were clearly visible, pointing outward like deadly spikes. Jake had seen pictures of Zephyrian ships before, but seeing one in person made his stomach tighten. "They're really not trying to look friendly, are they?" said Lieutenant Amy Collins, the ship's communications officer. She was standing beside Jake, her hands nervously adjusting her uniform. "Would you want them to look friendly?" Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "From what I've read, the Zephyrians respect strength above all else. If we showed up in a ship that looked like a pleasure cruise, they'd probably laugh us out of the sector." Captain Helen Parker joined them at the viewport. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had served in 3 different wars. Even she looked nervous about this meeting. "This is the first time humans have ever tried to make peace with the Zephyrians," she said. "The entire galaxy is watching to see if we can pull this off." The Zephyrian ship was getting closer now. Jake could see smaller fighter craft moving around it like angry insects. Each fighter was armed with enough firepower to destroy a small city. The Zephyrians had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They were good at it. "Incoming message from the Zephyrian vessel," Amy announced. "They're requesting permission to dock." "Grant it," Captain Parker ordered, "and make sure our security teams are ready. I don't expect trouble, but with the Zephyrians, you never know." Jake straightened his uniform and checked his translator. "Device one more time." As the ship's head diplomat, he would be leading the negotiations. He had studied Zephyrian culture for months, learning their customs and their language. But reading about them in books was very different from meeting them face to face. The docking bay was filled with human Marines when Jake arrived. They all looked tense, their weapons ready but not pointed directly at the airlock. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the other side of the metal door. Whatever was coming through was big. The airlock opened with a loud hiss. Steam poured out, and then Jake saw his first Zephyrian. The creature was enormous, at least 8 feet tall and covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. Bone-like spikes jutted out from its shoulders and arms, and its face was a terrifying mix of reptilian and humanoid features. Its eyes glowed with an amber light that seemed to pierce right through Jake's soul. But it was the second Zephyrian that made Jake's breath catch in his throat. She was slightly smaller than the first, but no less intimidating. Her scales were a deep blue-green color, and the bone protrusions on her body were carved with intricate patterns that Jake realized must be some kind of military decoration. Her movements were fluid and graceful, like a predator who knew exactly how dangerous she was. "I am War Commander Kethvara of the Zephyrian Empire," she said, her voice deep and resonant. The translator device converted her words into English, but Jake could hear the original alien sounds underneath. "You are the human diplomat?" "Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison," Jake replied, stepping forward. He had practiced this moment dozens of times, but his mouth still felt dry. "Welcome aboard the USS Horizon." Kethvara's glowing eyes studied him carefully. Jake felt like she was measuring him, deciding whether he was worth her time. The other Zephyrians behind her were doing the same thing to the human Marines. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Your ship is small," Kethvara observed. "Are you not concerned about showing weakness?" "We believe that strength comes from more than just the size of your weapons," Jake replied, remembering his cultural training. "We hope to show you that humans can be strong allies, not just strong enemies." Something that might have been amusement flickered in Kethvara's eyes. "Interesting. We shall see if your words have meaning." The group moved to the ship's main conference room, where the formal negotiations would take place. Jake found himself walking beside Kethvara, trying not to stare at the intricate battle scars that covered her arms. Each one probably had a story, a moment when she had faced death and survived. "How many wars have you fought?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. 17 major campaigns," Kethvara replied without emotion. 43 smaller conflicts. I've been in combat since I was old enough to hold a weapon." That must have been difficult, Jake said. Kethvara stopped walking and turned to look at him. Her expression was confused, as if he had said something in a language she didn't understand. Difficult? It is what I was born for, what I was made for? Made for? In Zephyrian society, we are bred for specific purposes, she explained. Some are bred to be workers, others to be thinkers. I was bred to be a warrior. To fight and to kill, nothing more. Jake felt a chill at the casual way she spoke about it. Don't you ever want to do something else? Want? Kethvara seemed to consider the word carefully. I do not understand this concept. I am what I am. There is no other choice. They reached the conference room, where the other diplomats were already waiting. The human team consisted of Jake, Captain Parker, and Dr. Robert Hayes, a cultural expert who had spent years studying alien civilizations. The Zephyrian team was smaller, just Kethvara and two other warriors who never spoke. The negotiations began badly. The humans wanted to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchange. The Zephyrians wanted to talk about military alliances and territorial boundaries. Every time Jake tried to steer the conversation toward peaceful cooperation, Kethvara would bring it back to questions of strength and dominance. Your species is weak, she said at one point, her voice matter-of-fact rather than insulting. You value things like art and music and literature. These things do not win wars. But they make life worth living, Jake countered. What's the point of winning wars if you have nothing beautiful to fight for? Kethvara's eyes narrowed. Beauty is a weakness. It distracts from duty. It makes warriors soft. I disagree, Jake said, leaning forward. Beauty gives us strength. It reminds us what we're protecting. You speak of things you do not understand, Kethvara replied. In my culture there is no room for such foolishness. Dr. Hayes cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the practical matters, he suggested. Trade routes, resource sharing, that sort of thing. But Jake was fascinated by Kethvara's worldview. Here was a being who had been trained from birth to be a perfect weapon, who had never been allowed to see herself as anything more than a tool of war. It seemed like such a waste. As the hours passed, the negotiations grew more tense. The Zephyrians seemed to view every human proposal as a sign of weakness. The humans couldn't understand why the Zephyrians were so focused on military power. By the end of the day, both sides were frustrated. We will continue tomorrow, Kethvara announced, rising from her chair. Perhaps your species will find more wisdom by then. As the Zephyrians filed out of the conference room, Jake found himself studying Kethvara's movements. Despite her intimidating appearance, there was something graceful about the way she carried herself, something that reminded him of a dancer, even though he was sure she had never learned to dance. Jake, Captain Parker said quietly, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Jake replied, watching Kethvara disappear down the corridor. So do I. 3 days later, Jake found himself on Nexus Station, a massive neutral space station where the peace talks were continuing. The station was huge, with different sections for different alien species. Humans, Zephyrians, and dozens of other races. All had their own areas, but the central hub was shared by everyone. Jake was walking through the main corridor when the alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed everywhere, and a mechanical voice echoed through the station. All personnel report to emergency stations. We are under attack. This is not a drill. People started running in all directions. Jake saw human families grabbing their children, alien traders scrambling to protect their goods, and security officers rushing toward the outer decks. Through the large windows, he could see explosions lighting up the darkness of space. Pirates! Someone shouted. 3 ships. Maybe more. Jake ran toward the security center, but the corridors were packed with panicking civilians. He pushed through the crowd, trying to reach the command post where he might be able to help coordinate the defense. That's when he saw her. Kethvara was standing in the middle of the chaos, completely calm. She had some kind of Zephyrian weapon. In her hands, a long staff that crackled with energy. Around her, other Zephyrian warriors were forming a defensive line. protecting a group of terrified civilians who had nowhere else to go. "Move them to the intersections," Kethvara ordered her warriors. "The pirates will try to take hostages. We will not let them." Jake watched in amazement as the fearsome war commander gently helped an elderly human woman to her feet. The woman was crying, too scared to move, but Kethvara spoke to her in a surprisingly soft voice. "You are safe now," Kethvara said. "We will protect you." The woman looked up at Kethvara's terrifying face and somehow found comfort there. She nodded and let the Zephyrian warrior guide her toward safety. Another explosion rocked the station. Jake was thrown against a wall, his head spinning. When he looked up, he saw that one of the outer hull sections had been breached. Air was rushing out into space, and several people were in danger of being sucked into the void. Without thinking, Jake grabbed an emergency force field generator from a nearby wall panel and ran toward the breach. But before he could reach it, Kethvara was already there. She had somehow wedged herself against the damaged wall, using her own body to block the air from escaping while her warriors evacuated the civilians. "The force field generator!" Jake shouted over the noise of rushing air. "I can activate it." Kethvara nodded, her face strained from the effort of holding back the vacuum of space. Jake worked quickly, connecting the device to the stations. Power grid. The force field flickered to life, sealing the breach. "Thank you," Kethvara said, breathing heavily. "That was well done." Before Jake could respond, another alarm started sounding. This one was different, more urgent. "The pirates have boarded the station," a voice announced. "All security personnel to Deck 7. Armed intruders in the civilian quarters." Jake felt his blood run cold. The civilian quarters were where the families lived, where the children were. The pirates weren't just trying to rob the station. They were going after the most vulnerable people. "I'm going to help," Jake said, checking his sidearm. "No," Kethvara replied firmly. "You are not a warrior. You will only get in the way." "Those are my people down there," Jake shot back. "I'm not going to hide while they're in danger." Kethvara studied his face for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. But you will do exactly as I say, do you understand?" "Yes." "Then follow me." They ran through the station corridors, Kethvara moving with deadly grace while Jake struggled to keep up. Other security forces were converging on Deck 7, but Jake could hear the sound of weapons fire getting closer. When they reached the civilian quarters, Jake saw the pirates for the first time. They were a mixed group of different species, all armed with military-grade weapons. They had cornered a group of families in the main living area and were demanding access to the station's financial systems. "Give us the codes," the pirate leader was shouting at a terrified station administrator, "or we start killing the children." Jake felt rage building in his chest. These weren't honorable warriors fighting for a cause. They were criminals preying on innocent people. Kethvara held up her hand, signaling for Jake to wait. She was studying the situation, counting the pirates, and noting their positions. Jake realized she was planning an attack. "There are 12 of them," she whispered. "Too many for a direct assault. We need to divide them." "How?" "You will create a distraction. Draw some of them away from the civilians. I will attack from the other side." "What kind of distraction?" "Use your diplomatic skills," Kethvara said with what might have been a smile. "Talk to them, make them angry. Make them focus on you instead of the hostages." Jake nodded, understanding. He stepped out into the open, his hands raised. "Hey," he called out. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Morrison of the USS Horizon." "I'm the one you really want?" The pirate leader turned toward him, a cruel grin on his face, a human diplomat. "How much do you think the Earth government would pay for you?" "More than they'd pay for a bunch of civilians," Jake replied, walking slowly forward. "But you'll have to catch me first." He was terrified, but he kept his voice steady. Behind the pirates, he could see Kethvara moving into position. She was like a shadow, completely silent despite her size. "You're brave, human," the pirate leader said, "or stupid. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." "I prefer to think of it as practical," Jake replied. "You want hostages?" "I'm worth more than all of them combined." The pirate leader gestured to 3 of his men. Take him. As the pirates moved toward Jake, Kethvara struck. She moved faster than Jake had ever seen anyone move, her energy weapon cutting through the air like lightning. The first pirate went down before he even knew what hit him. The battle was fierce but brief. Kethvara fought with a skill that was almost artistic. Every movement was precise, every strike perfectly timed. Jake did his best to help, but mostly he just tried to stay out of her way. When it was over, all 12 pirates were either dead or unconscious. The civilians were safe, and the station's security forces were finally arriving to secure the area. That was incredible, Jake said, breathing hard. I've never seen anyone fight like that. Kethvara was checking on the wounded, making sure the civilians were all right. It was adequate, she replied without emotion. Adequate? Jake stared at her. You just saved dozens of lives. The way you moved, the way you protected everyone, it was beautiful. Kethvara froze. She turned to look at Jake, her glowing eyes wide with confusion. What did you say? I said it was beautiful. The way you fought? The way you protected those people? It was like watching a master artist at work. You call my fighting beautiful? Kethvara's voice was strange, almost uncertain. Yes, why wouldn't I? For a long moment, Kethvara just stared at him. Then she turned away without another word and began helping the medical teams tend to the wounded. Jake watched her go, wondering what he had said wrong. In his mind, there was nothing more beautiful than someone using their strength to protect others. But clearly, Kethvara saw things differently. As the station slowly returned to normal, Jake found himself thinking about the Zephyrian warrior. She had risked her life to save people she didn't even know. She had shown compassion to a frightened old woman. She had fought with a grace and skill that took his breath away. If that wasn't beautiful, then Jake didn't know what was, but something told him that Kethvara had never thought of herself that way. And that, he realized, was the real tragedy. After the pirate attack, Jake couldn't stop thinking about Kethvara. The way she had frozen when he called her beautiful kept replaying in his mind. He had clearly said something that troubled her, but he didn't understand what. The peace talks had resumed, but the atmosphere was different now. The shared danger had brought the human and Zephyrian delegations closer together. Jake found himself sitting across from Kethvara during the negotiations, and sometimes he caught her watching him with those glowing amber eyes. The trade routes through the Kepler sector would benefit both our species, Dr. Hayes was saying. Human technology combined with Zephyrian mining expertise could increase profits by 30%. Profits mean nothing if we cannot defend what we build, Kethvara replied. The galaxy is full of threats. Your species seems to forget this. We don't forget, Jake said. We just believe that building something worth protecting is as important as protecting it. Kethvara's eyes focused on him. You speak of beauty again. Of things that serve no military purpose. Everything serves a purpose, Jake replied. Art inspires people, music brings them together. Literature teaches them to understand each other. These things make a civilization strong in ways that weapons never could. Words, Kethvara said dismissively. Pretty words that mean nothing when the enemy is at your door. Then why did you save those civilians? Jake asked. They couldn't help you win any battles. They had no military value. Why risk your life for them? Kethvara was quiet for a long moment. It was my duty, she finally said. Was it, or was it something else? Captain Parker cleared her throat. Perhaps we should take a break, she suggested. We've been at this for hours. As the others filed out of the conference room, Jake lingered behind. Kethvara was gathering her data tablets, her movements sharp and precise. She seemed uncomfortable with the direction their conversation had taken. Kethvara, Jake said quietly, can I ask you something? She looked up at him, wary. What? When you were a child, before you became a warrior, what did you want to be? I do not understand the question. Did you ever dream about doing something else? Being something else? Kethvara's expression hardened. Zephyrian children do not dream. We are trained from birth to fulfill our purpose. I was bred to be a warrior. I was trained to fight. There was never any other choice. But surely you must have wondered about other things. About what it would be like to explore the galaxy or create something instead of destroying it or just live peacefully somewhere. Peace is an illusion, Kethvara said, but her voice lacked conviction. There is only war and the brief moments between wars. That's not true. There are entire worlds where people have lived in peace for centuries. Places where children grow up never knowing the sound of weapons fire. Weak worlds, Kethvara replied automatically. They exist only because stronger worlds protect them. Maybe. But doesn't that make the protection beautiful? Isn't there something beautiful about being strong enough to let others be weak? Kethvara stared at him. You use that word again? Beautiful. Why do you keep calling things beautiful? Jake thought about how to explain. Because they are. Beauty isn't just about how something looks. It's about how it makes you feel. When I see someone protecting others, like you did during the attack, it makes me feel ... full, inspired. That's beautiful to me. In my culture, such feelings are considered weakness. In mine, they're considered strength. They walked out of the conference room together, moving slowly through the station's corridors. Other species passed them by, giving the towering Zephyrian warrior a wide berth. Jake noticed how isolated she seemed, how alone. Can I show you something? Jake asked as they reached the station's central hub. Kethvara nodded reluctantly. Jake led her to one of the observation decks, where a massive window looked out into space. Beyond the glass, a nearby nebula painted the darkness with swirls of purple and gold. Stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Look at that, Jake said, pointing to the nebula. What do you see? A cloud of gas and dust? Kethvara replied, stellar debris, nothing more. I see a painting that took 1,000,000 years to create. I see colors that no artist could ever match. I see proof that the universe is capable of creating something magnificent just because it can. Kethvara studied the nebula more carefully. It serves no purpose. It cannot be used as a weapon or a shield. It provides no tactical advantage. Exactly. It exists purely to be beautiful, and that's enough. They stood in silence for several minutes, watching the nebula slowly rotate in the distance. Jake could see Kethvara's reflection in the window, her alien features softened by the cosmic light. Your people, Kethvara said finally, they spend time looking at such things? All the time. We have artists who travel across the galaxy just to paint nebulae. Musicians who compose symphonies inspired by the sound of stellar winds. Poets who write about the loneliness of distant stars. And this makes them better warriors? It makes them better people. And better people make better warriors when they need to be. Kethvara turned to face him. You truly believe this? I do. Kethvara, you're one of the finest warriors I've ever met. But you're also intelligent, compassionate, and yes, beautiful. Your culture taught you to see only the warrior part, but there's so much more to you. I am what I was made to be, Kethvara. Sighed, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. No, you're what you chose to become. Every time you protected those civilians, every time you showed mercy to a defeated enemy, every time you questioned an order that seemed wrong, you were choosing to be more than just a weapon. How do you know I have done these things? Because I've been watching you. I've seen the way you move, the way you think, the way you care about others, even when you try to hide it. You're not just a warrior, Kethvara. You're a person. Kethvara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than Jake had ever heard it. Sometimes when I was young, I would sneak away from training to watch the sunset on my homeworld. The sky would turn colors that have no names in any language. I told myself I was studying the terrain, learning to use shadows for concealment. But really, I just liked the way it looked. That's beautiful, Jake said gently. I stopped doing it when I was older. My instructors said it was a waste of time. They said it made me weak. Your instructors were wrong, were they? I am a warrior. I kill enemies of my people. How can someone who brings death be beautiful? Jake turned to face her fully. Because you don't just bring death. You bring protection, You bring hope. You bring the promise that good people can sleep safely because someone like you is watching over them. That's not just beautiful, Kefvara. That's sacred. She stared at him, her glowing eyes wide with something that might have been wonder. I do not understand you, human. You speak of things my people would call madness. And yet, double quote, and yet when you say these things, I feel something. Something I have no name for. Something that makes me want to see those sunsets again. Jake smiled. That feeling has a name. It's called hope. Hope, Kefvara repeated, as if tasting the word. Is this another human weakness? No, Jake said. It's a human strength. And maybe it could be a Zephyrian strength too. As they stood there in the observation deck, watching the nebula dance in the darkness, Jake realized that something had changed between them. The fearsome war commander was still there, but so was something else. Something vulnerable and uncertain. And achingly beautiful, something that had been waiting a long time to be seen. Jake was alone in the observation deck when Kefvara found him. It was late in the station's artificial night cycle, and most people were asleep. The nebula outside looked different in the darkness, more mysterious and dreamlike. You come here. Often, Kefvara said, stepping up beside him at the window. It helps me think, Jake replied. The peace talks aren't going well. Some people on both sides don't want this to work. I know. My own commanders question why I spend time with you. They say it makes me appear weak. Jake looked at her reflection in the glass. What do you think? I think they are afraid. Afraid that if we make peace with humans, we will lose what makes us Zephyrian. Afraid that we will become soft. And you? Are you afraid? Kefvara was quiet for a long moment. Yes, but not of becoming soft. I am afraid of something else. What? She turned to face him, her glowing eyes intense in the dim light. I am afraid of the question that has been growing in my mind since the day we met. A question I have never dared to ask before. Jake felt his heart beat faster. What question? Kefvara moved closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Why do you call me beautiful, human? The question hung in the air between them like a living thing. Jake had been expecting it, but hearing it spoken aloud still made his breath catch. You really want to know? He asked. I must know. It torments me. In my culture, beauty is weakness. Warriors are not beautiful. We are weapons, we are tools of war. But when you say this word, when you look at me the way you do, I feel something I have never felt before. What do you feel? Like I am more than what I was made to be. Like I am a person, not just a thing that kills. She paused, struggling with the words. When you call me beautiful, I remember watching those sunsets as a child. I remember the feeling I had then, the feeling I thought I had lost forever. Jake reached out slowly, carefully, and touched her scaled hand. She didn't pull away. I call you beautiful because you are, he said simply. Not just the way you look, though your strength and grace are incredible to watch, but because of who you are inside, because you protect others without thinking about yourself, because you question things even when it's dangerous, because you're brave enough to feel things your culture tells you are forbidden. But I am a killer, Kefvara said, her voice pained. I have taken so many lives. How can something that brings death be beautiful? Because you don't kill for pleasure, you kill to protect. There's a difference between a murderer and a guardian. You're a guardian, Kefvara. You stand between the darkness and the light. That's not just beautiful, that's noble. Tears began to form in her alien eyes. Jake had never seen a Zephyrian cry before. I do not understand these feelings, she whispered. Since I was small, I was taught to feel nothing but duty. But when I am with you, I feel so much. It frightens me. Don't be frightened, Jake said gently. Feelings aren't weakness. They're what make us alive. My people would say I'm betraying everything I was raised to be. What do you say? Kefvara looked out at the nebula, her expression thoughtful. I say that for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm becoming who I was meant to be. Not what I was made to be, but who I was meant to be. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Jake could feel the warmth from her scaled skin, could hear the steady rhythm of her breathing. It was peaceful in a way he had never experienced before. "Jake," she said finally, "yes? If I am beautiful, as you say, then what does that make us?" "What are we becoming?" Jake thought about it carefully. "I think we're becoming friends, maybe more than friends." "More than friends? What does this mean?" "It means caring about someone so much that their happiness becomes as important as your own. It means wanting to protect them, not because it's your duty, but because you choose to. It means seeing them as the most beautiful thing in the universe." Kethvara turned to face him fully. "Is this what humans call love?" "Yes, I think it is. And you feel this for me? A warrior who has killed hundreds? An alien who looks nothing like your own species? I feel it because of who you are, not despite it. Your strength, your honor, your kindness when you think no. One is watching. The way you've started to question everything you were taught. The way you're brave enough to change." "Yes, Kethvara, I love you." She stared at him in wonder. "I do not know how to love. I was never taught." "No one is taught how to love. We learn by doing it. Will you teach me?" "We'll learn together." Before either of them could say more, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and the sound of running footsteps echoed through the corridors. "What's happening?" Jake asked. They ran toward the command center, where they found chaos. Human and Zephyrian security officers were shouting orders, and the main view screen showed multiple ships approaching the station. "Report," Kethvara commanded. "Unknown." "Vessels," a human officer replied. "They appeared out of nowhere. They're jamming our communications and powering up weapons." Jake studied the ships on the screen. They weren't pirates this time. These vessels were military grade, with the markings of both human and Zephyrian extremist groups. "It's a joint attack," he realized. "Human and Zephyrian extremists working together to stop the peace talks." "Impossible," Kethvara said. "No. Zephyrian would work with humans to betray their own people." "They would if they thought the peace talks were a bigger threat than their enemies," Jake replied grimly. "They're trying to start a war." The lead ship opened fire on the station's communication array. The lights flickered as the station's shields absorbed the impact. "They're trying to cut us off from our governments," Captain Parker said, joining them at the command center. "If they can make it look like we attacked each other, they can restart the war." "We have to stop them," Jake said. "How?" Kethvara asked. "We have no warships here, only diplomatic vessels." "We don't need warships," Jake said, an idea forming in his mind. "We need to work together. Human and Zephyrian, fighting side by side. If we can show the galaxy that cooperation is possible, we can defeat their message of hate." "You want to fight alongside my people?" Kethvara asked. "I want to fight alongside you," Jake replied. "All of you, human and Zephyrian, together." Kethvara looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. But one lead the military aspects of this operation. You handle the diplomatic side." "Agreed." As they began coordinating the station's defenses, Jake realized that this was more than just a battle for survival. This was a test of everything they had talked about. Could two species that had been enemies work together? Could love overcome hatred? Could beauty triumph over the darkness? Looking at Kethvara as she organized the defense, her movements graceful and deadly, her voice calm and commanding, Jake knew the answer. She was beautiful. She was strong. She was everything he had ever admired in another being, and together, they would prove that love was stronger than war. The battle was about to begin, but Jake wasn't afraid. He had something worth fighting for now. He had someone worth fighting for. He had Kethvara. The battle for Nexus Station began with a coordinated assault from 12 ships. Half carried human extremist markings, half bore Zephyrian war symbols. They had clearly planned this attack for months, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy any chance of peace between the two species. Jake stood in the command center beside Kethvara, watching the tactical display as enemy fighters swarmed around the station. The combined human and Zephyrian defense force was working together, but they were badly outnumbered. "Station shields at 60%, reported Lieutenant Collins. They're concentrating fire on the docking bays. They want to board us. Let them come, Kefvara said grimly. We will be ready. Jake watched her coordinate the defense with calm efficiency. She had positioned human and Zephyrian warriors throughout the station, mixing the two species so they would have to rely on each other. It was brilliant strategy, but more than that, it was a statement about what was possible when enemies chose to become allies. Jake, Captain Parker said urgently, we're picking up transmissions from the attacking ships. They're broadcasting propaganda to both homeworlds, claiming we betrayed each other. They're saying humans attacked a Zephyrian delegation. And Zephyrian ships are saying we attacked them, Jake realized. They planned this perfectly. No matter who wins, the peace talks are destroyed. Then we cannot let either side win, Kefvara said. We must capture their leaders alive and prove the truth. The first wave of boarders hit the station's outer decks. Jake could hear the sound of weapons fire echoing through the corridors as human and Zephyrian security teams fought side by side against the invaders. I'm going to help with the defense, Jake said, checking his weapon. No, Kefvara replied firmly. You are too valuable. If you are killed, the extremists can claim whatever they want about your death. I'm not hiding while other people fight. For peace, Jake shot back. Besides, someone needs to coordinate the human forces with yours. I speak both languages. Kefvara stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but you stay close to me. I will not lose you now. They moved through the station together, rallying the defenders and coordinating the resistance. Jake was amazed at how well the human and Zephyrian forces worked together when they had a common enemy. Fear and prejudice melted away when people had to trust each other to survive. The fighting was fierce. The extremists were well-trained and well-equipped, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had assumed that humans and Zephyrians could never truly work together. They were wrong. Jake watched a human marine share ammunition with a Zephyrian warrior. He saw a Zephyrian medic treating wounded humans with the same care she gave her own people. He witnessed acts of courage and sacrifice that crossed species lines. Look at them, he said to Kefvara as they took cover during a particularly intense firefight. Look how they fight together. This is what the future could be like. If we survive to see it, Kefvara replied, but there was hope in her voice. The battle reached its climax when the extremist leaders finally boarded the station themselves. Jake recognized the human leader, General Marcus Stone, a disgraced officer who had been court-martialed for war crimes years ago. The Zephyrian leader was Warcast Dekmer, a hardliner who had opposed the peace talks from the beginning. Morrison, General Stone called out as he and his forces cornered Jake and Kefvara in the main corridor. You're the fool who thinks he can make peace with these monsters. The only monsters here are the ones trying to start a war, Jake replied. War is the natural state of the universe, Dekmer growled in his deep Zephyrian voice. These humans seek to make us weak with their talk of peace and cooperation. They seek to make us strong, Kefvara said, stepping forward. Strong enough to build something instead of just destroying it. You have been corrupted, Kefvara, Dekmer snarled. You have forgotten what it means to be Zephyrian. No, Kefvara replied firmly. I have remembered what it means to be alive. The two groups faced each other across the corridor. Jake could see that they were outnumbered, but he also saw something else. Behind the extremists, human and Zephyrian security forces were moving into position. The defenders had rallied. It's over, Jake said calmly. You've lost. Look around you. Humans and Zephyrians are fighting together, protecting each other. Your plan has failed. Not yet, General Stone said, raising his weapon. If I kill the Zephyrian war commander, I can still blame it on their people. The war will begin. Everything happened at once. Stone fired his weapon at Kefvara. Jake threw himself forward, trying to push her out of the way. The energy beam caught him in the chest, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the floor. Kefvara's roar of rage echoed through the station. She moved faster than Jake had ever seen her move, faster than seemed possible. Her energy staff cut through Stone's weapon, then threw stone himself. Vekmor tried to intervene, but the other Zephyrian warriors had had enough of his extremism. They restrained him without violence. "Jake," Kethvara said, dropping to her knees beside him. "Jake, stay with me." The pain was incredible, but Jake forced himself to focus on her face. Her alien features were twisted with anguish, and tears were streaming down her scaled cheeks. "I'm okay," he managed to say. "It looks worse than it is." "You saved me," she whispered. "You threw yourself into danger to protect me." "Of course I did. I love you." "And I love you," she said, the words coming naturally now. "I understand now what love means. It means being willing to sacrifice everything for another. It means seeing beauty even in the darkest moments. It means choosing hope over fear." Medical teams arrived and began treating Jake's wounds. As they worked, he could see the cleanup beginning throughout the station. The extremists were being arrested by joint human and Zephyrian security forces. The propaganda broadcasts had been cut off and replaced with the truth over the following days. As Jake recovered in the medical bay, the peace talks resumed with new energy. The attack had shown both species what they could accomplish when they worked together. The extremists had intended to start a war, but instead they had proven that peace was possible. Kethvara rarely left Jake's side during his recovery. She told him about the changes happening throughout the station. Human and Zephyrian personnel were requesting to serve together permanently. Trade agreements were being signed. Cultural exchange programs were being planned. "The galaxy is watching," she said. "They see that two species that were enemies can become allies. Some are frightened by this, others are inspired. And you?" Jake asked. "Are you frightened or inspired?" "I am hopeful," Kethvara replied. "For the first time in my life, I am truly hopeful." On the day Jake was released from medical care, Kethvara took him back to the observation deck where they had shared so many conversations. The nebula outside looked the same, but everything else had changed. "I have made a decision," she said. "I am resigning from the Zephyrian military. I want to stay here on the station as a cultural liaison. I want to help build the peace we fought for." "And I want to stay too," Jake replied. "The diplomatic corps has offered me a permanent position here." They stood together at the window, looking out at the stars. Two beings from different worlds who had found something beautiful in each other. "Jake," Kethvara said softly. "Yes? Thank you for teaching me that I am more than a weapon. Thank you for showing me that strength can create as well as destroy. Thank you for calling me beautiful when no one else ever had." "Thank you for letting me see the real you," Jake replied. "The you that watches sunsets and protects the innocent and dares to love despite everything you were taught." As they watched the nebula dance in the darkness, Jake realized that this was just the beginning. They had proven that love could cross any barrier, that beauty could be found in the most unexpected places, and that hope was stronger than fear. The alien warrior had asked why he called her beautiful. Now she knew the answer. She was beautiful because she had chosen to be more than what the universe had made her. She had chosen to love, to hope, and to build instead of just destroy, and that, Jake thought, was the most beautiful thing of all.